Take two. Welcome to Bridges Life Presents Mental Health Monday. Every Monday, we talk about Mental Health Monday. There's a lot of things going on, and I'd like to thank you everyone for listening and watching and sharing about all the things that's going on in their world, our world, and the community. I'd like everyone to welcome my daughter, one of many of the 9 children, 7 girls. This is Miss Nia. Hi, Nia.
Hi.
Mental Health Monday. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what disturbance causes disturbance. Does that make sense? What disturbance causes disturbance? Here's the thing. When people speak, it creates, and that's why I have this brain here, it creates a firing mechanism. Words have a vibration and words have a connection. Words have a connection not unbeknownst to each other, but to ourselves. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You want to explain what you heard?
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Basically, it's like a conversation. You have to have a trigger, and then you have to have an ending, and they both connect through whatever you decide to share with the other person.
Right. And I think that connection is often perceived or misunderstood. More often, I think it's just perceived. And less often, I think it's misunderstood. I think the simplest ways to put it, when we have a disconnect through communication, which creates a trigger, there is a separate dictionary of what we considered to another person or ourselves, what the meaning is or the phrase is trying to say. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
How do we correct that? What do you think? What are some of those options that we can have? Is it just understanding what one is talking about, or what is one would like to say?
Comprehension, basically. There really is no way to fix it. There's ways to aid in its efforts. One of them would be being open to a different understanding than what you are used to.
And I think there's probably the big hill for people with mental health. When we talk about mental health, we're talking about whole health. We're talking about things may start in the mind, but it can affect the body. But right now, we're talking about communications and mental health, things that trigger other people into a box, corner, or segment of their own personal mind. Because when people speak, are they responsible for your triggers?
No,
I don't think people are responsible for each other's triggers, but does that mean, is that inconsiderate if you don't consider someone else's triggers?
Yes.
But how does a person know that they are being inconsiderate if they're not thinking of you at all?
I think if you have a past to or with someone and something that you've done before has been brought to light as something that hurts or triggers the person, if you disregard all of that to the point where you're not thinking of it when you're communicating the next time, that in and of itself is being inconsiderate.
Now, I don't know if that we can get into the weeds or to the minutia or to the lines of what's inconsiderate or what isn't inconsiderate. Is that a disagreement in itself for people?
It can be.
It can be. And I think therein lies where people don't understand the triggers. Because if I think that is inconsiderate is subjective, can I also say my words are subjective of how it triggers? And I think that's why there's so much difficulty in as far as communication with another. Often we talk about what's the other communication? Are we talking about partners, friends, family, lovers, cats, dogs? And who are we really talking about when we talk about communication? I think communication can be as simple as communication with all, not just with the select. Because if you can only communicate with only certain people, I'm not sure if that's called communication.
It's just understanding.
Yeah.
You have a basis of conversation with someone that is consistent throughout your life and you get each other. That's just an understanding between two people.
So that's, I think So can you explain what communication is for the masses?
I can't unless you want me to look it up. I can explain what my idea of communication is.
Absolutely. What's yours?
My idea of communication is a little different from most people's, just because of being autistic and everything. But it's starting with a forward word or a drop beat, is like in music, and it being followed by a consecutive sentences between two different people that revolve around the same idea.
Gotcha. Do I? And I think when we talk about communication, I think people think communication is like commercials. I think people think communications like commercials. Like once I put in my ad, I'm here to sell you on what I'm trying to say. And I think we get so much of our process of communications from the media or from TV, which is odd because we're doing this more to help people to just sit back and just say, how am I speaking or how is someone understanding? They're not the same, but they can both lead you to the same mountaintop.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why when we have this brain mechanism behind us, when we call what is being fired, what is being triggered, certain words trigger certain things. Certain words trigger certain things. Certain words trigger certain emotions. Certain words trigger certain feelings. Those are three different statements. And I think when we talk about communication, certain words trigger certain things, feelings, and emotions, then what is it that I'm saying and what is it being understood and how is it being communicated? Meaning, how am I transmitting and how am I receiving? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree.
Is there something that can we just slow down on vocalization, on communication? Because I hear this and I've heard this and people have said this, that communication is so much more physical. It's in the face, it's how you say it, it's how the pitch, but they lose track of the words being spoken.
There's more than one way to communicate too. I mean, communication is in the eyes, it's in the hands, it's in the mouth, it's in the way you dress. It's everywhere. I mean, there are plenty of ways to communicate.
But are you hyper focusing on one over the other? Or is there a hyper focus on one over the other?
Hyper focus, no. More obvious, yeah. Communication through the mouth is much more obvious than a communication in the eyes. You don't have to look at the person to know what they're trying to do.
Yeah, well, if you're missing the words being spoken in the meaning of the words and you're only doing it on the gestures, then you might miss the pieces of the puzzle of the pie.
Well, then it changes nothing because a lot of people don't pay attention anyways.
So again, is communication. So are we miscommunicating if a person says, I am not paying attention, or they don't think they're paying? What if they think they're paying attention? I think when we keep talking about these triggers, I think it's a thought process of what they think they're thinking without being redundant. How can someone be aware of the thought, the thinker? How can the thinker be aware of the thought before spoken words are said?
Stop and think.
Stop and think. What about stop and think and outcome? Is that part of stop and think?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to sum up?
Sum up what?
What we were just saying? Mental Health Monday, communication is more than what you think it is. It has a lot to do with so many more pieces than just my understanding of what it should be, could be, and needs to be for the ego. This is harmful. This is dreadfully harmful when you speak words and you have very little understanding of what it could be perceived as, without you trying to derive or conclude what you want it to be perceived as. Do you ever have those conversations?
With who?
With anyone who's trying to give you their opinion and what it should be your opinion?
Often.
How does that go for you?
Well, it's usually around politics, so not very well. I'm a pretty open-minded person, so if someone comes to me with a logical argument, I can be easily swayed. I am usually swayed by logic, as I'm a logical thinker. But if someone comes to me with an opinion that they have and it's rooted in an emotion, it's hard for me to follow because I don't know how you can forge facts out of an opinion created through emotion.
But therein lies the mixed signals of words being spoken or actions being done. We are more than what you see. We are more, we're human beings. We have so much great ability, and we waste it on trying to convince or to convey someone else's power over system. And what I mean by the power over system is that anything I say supersedes anything you could feel or think. And that's not communication. That thought process is a trigger. Anything that comes from that will always create a trigger of negative, not without a positive result. Before we sign out here on Mental Health Mondays, Nia, would like to say anything before you take off? You've been here for a couple of weeks. I'd like to say thank you for being my partner in crime. It's time to get back. Anything you want to talk about when it comes to mental health and things that you've been thinking about and working on, or in school? Anything?
Just take care of yourself. Your mental health is more important than anything an outside force can provide. So
don't ever sacrifice your mental health, please. And if you need help, just ask. If you don't know how to ask someone to help you ask, because you cannot do this by yourself. We're not meant to do this by ourselves. Please be kind, be compassionate, and be caring. And this takes a practice of doing. Thank you so much.